They say the most popular guy on a football team can be the backup quarterback, and that may be the case in 2025 for the Michigan Wolverines and the USC Trojans. There may be no brighter future. There may be no more popular guys on these. Bryce Underwood for Michigan, from the state of Michigan. Husan Longstreet from the state of California. Both local kids, and both have all of the talent in the world and have an extremely bright future at the quarterback position. But the question is, the future may be bright, but is the future now in 2025? I think there's a good chance it just might be. I do not envy the situations that Jaden Mayava and Mikey Keene find themselves in as the, we'll call it quote unquote incumbents, right? Because I know Mikey Keene is transferring in, but the veteran guys at quarterback that are going to have these 5-star talents looking over their shoulder the whole situation. Jaden Mayava and Mikey Keene are going to have the ultimate microscope on them this season. They are going to have every throw analyzed. They are going to have every decision that they make in the passing game and the offense analyzed throughout the early part of the season because of who is right behind them on the depth chart. Now, how both of these teams approach this thing, I think is going to be pretty different. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Lincoln Riley at USC and Sharon Moore at Michigan really approach this. I think. And they have the history of maybe approaching this in a little bit of a different way, certainly as well. Let's start with the USC Trojans. Now, I think because the difference in all of this is maybe what the expectations are for each one of these teams in 2025. So when we look at USC, this is a team, look, I know, hey, September looked really good last year, and maybe that they could have been on their way to a possible CFP type of position, but this is not a team at USC that's expected to be a CFP team or a high level and have a crazy high level of expectations. This is a building process, I think, in Southern California, certainly for USC this season, to be able to continue to get better defensively and, of course, on offense to continue to build towards the future. So this is not something where you're leaning on a signal caller that if you do go with a true freshman, whenever that may be, that you need him to make every single play at every single time. I think that there's a little bit of leniency for USC to maybe have some development of a young quarterback. And when I look at these two situations, and I'll get into this when I talk about Michigan's situation, when I look at both of these situations, I think there's a better chance for USC to go with the freshman quarterback earlier than there is for the Wolverines of Michigan. Like, when I look at Jaden Mayava, look, he's got good arm talent. He can make throws, but when it comes to decision-making, when it comes to reading defenses, he ain't it. He ain't it. Like, if you throw Jaden Mayava out there for 12 games, and I'm not saying Husan Longstreet would not make these mistakes. We don't know. We haven't seen him on a college football field yet. But when I look at Jaden Mayava, I have a feeling there's going to be a game on the schedule. I don't know which game it's going to be, but there's going to be a game on the schedule that they're going to lose that they should win because of costly turnovers. That's what I see out of a quarterback like Jaden Mayava. There is a favorable start to the season. If they want to go with Husan Longstreet from the word go, there is a favorable start for Husan to gain confidence. There is a favorable start for him to be able to learn things because confidence is so big of a young quarterback. You throw a young quarterback into a tough non-conference game, into some tough early conference games, especially in a Power 2 conference like the Big Ten, that can kind of go south very, very, very quickly. You look at the early schedule for USC. Home against Missouri State, home against Georgia Southern, hard stop. That's a great opportunity if they go with Husan Longstreet to get a true freshman out there and to put a good production, get it to Jacoby Lane, get it to Makai Lemon, start to establish that chemistry certainly just a little bit and gain that confidence so you're playing better and feeling better with the decisions you're making as a true freshman within this offense as well. Now, you go to your first conference game on the road in the Big Ten, okay? But you go at Purdue, a team that has all kinds of movement. They're still going to be figuring things out very early in the season with Barry Odom in his first year as the head coach of that football program. Like, if you're going to have a road game in the Big Ten early that's favorable, it's going to be at Purdue. And then the next game you come home and you got Spartans versus Trojans, whip out the swords, and you got Michigan State at home. Like, those first 4 games, if you are going to ask a freshman quarterback to come in and be at least semi-successful, I don't know if you can think of a better 4-game stretch to really start off the season than that type of situation out there. Now, once you get past that, Illinois on the road, Michigan, and at Notre Dame, and at Nebraska, that's where maybe we could have some growing pains if indeed there is a freshman quarterback that certainly goes in there as well. Now, here's what I will say about what I'm kind of looking at in terms of USC and a possible Husan Longstreet takeover this season. And maybe there's some uncertainty. I think some uncertainty in the run game puts a lot more pressure on Husan Longstreet to make plays. I'll talk about this maybe when I talk about Michigan. I trust more in Michigan's ability to call the run game and balance the run game in their offense than I do USC. There were many points during this last season where it's clear, hand the freaking ball to Woody Marks. Yet, Lincoln Riley insisted in putting the football in the air. You do that with a true freshman, I don't know how that's going to go. So we think about the uncertainty as it comes to the play calling with Lincoln Riley, but you also come uncertainty when it comes to the personnel. With no Woody Marks and no Quentin Joyner in this backfield. You've got Eli Sanders. Hey, he was a 1,000-yard back at New Mexico last season. Could he be good? Yeah, he could be good. We just don't know. I think Brian Jackson is going to get an increased role. I've got a feeling the run game is going to be pretty good, but once again, it's uncertainty. Uncertainty in exactly how this is going to be balanced out. I think one of the worst things that maybe you could do for the it could be good. Who knows? Husan Longstreet could be a great passer right out of the gate. But putting so much pressure on him right out of playing football at Centennial High School in Corona last year, now to be this guy that's putting it in the air a ton, I don't know. As a freshman quarterback, I think you want to be able to lean on the run game a little bit. I'm not sure how much that could be out there at USC. But I think there's a legitimate chance that when USC trots out there for the first game of the year, I think there's a chance that we could see Husan Longstreet as the QB1. I know we still have the spring transfer portal quarterback period as well. Let's go over to Michigan. Now, when I first talked about USC, I talked about, hey, this is not a team that's maybe a college football playoff contender. There's certainly some room to grow, and maybe you can grow with a true freshman quarterback certainly playing there as well. Michigan's different. Michigan has college football playoff expectations this season. And they should have college football playoff expectations this season because they've got a schedule that generates college football playoff expectations. Of course, they have Ohio State at the end of the year, but they get Ohio State in Ann Arbor this season. No Oregon on the schedule. No Penn State on the schedule. This is a schedule where they can get to 10-2. And because of that, how willing is Michigan going to be to put a true freshman into that situation when they want to reach that type of level? Now, I think there's two schools of thought, and it's twofold a little bit. School of thought number one, you want to go with a proven veteran guy that gives us a better chance to maybe a safer chance to be able to meet our goals. A guy that's been in those situations, although at the group of 5 level, but he's seen college football defenses, and he kind of knows, and there won't be maybe growing pains that there could be with a true freshman. What about on the flip side of it? Bryce Underwood's talent, just his sheer arm talent, could give Michigan a better chance maybe to achieve more of their goals than having someone like Mikey Keene. I think it's fairly obvious and certain when all is said and done, Bryce Underwood is going to be a better quarterback. He's going to be a better prospect for the NFL. He's going to be all these things better than Mikey Keene. But we're focusing on a vacuum in 2025. So I think there's a couple schools of thought that could go on there, certainly at Michigan. I think the start of the season is a little bit tougher for a young quarterback at Michigan than it is at USC. You look at the schedule. Home against New Mexico, but you got to go on the road to Oklahoma in week number 2. That's a good Oklahoma defense. Brent Venables is going to be calling that defense next season. It was good last year. Home against Central Michigan in week 3, and then you got to go to Nebraska. Those road games against some old Big 8 flavor with Oklahoma and Nebraska in the first 4 games of the season. Once again, you can approach this maybe a little bit twofold. What happens if Mikey Keene goes out there in the Oklahoma game, in the Nebraska game, one of the game, maybe both of the games? What if Mikey Keene goes out there and he throws for 202 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks, and they lose to Oklahoma? That's the big, wherever it happens, that's going to be the big turning point for Michigan. When Mikey Keene has a poor performance, hell, when Mikey Keene has an average performance, I think there's going to be a lot of people out there saying, how much are we paying Bryce Underwood? What's the figure? What's the figure? And a lot of people are going to be saying, we need to play Bryce Underwood. That's what I talked about at the very beginning of this, is these guys are going to be under the ultimate microscope. What's going to happen in that situation at that point in time as well? And what if we get a Cade McNamara, J.J. McCarthy type of balance as well? I think that is what we are going to get. I feel pretty confident that Mikey Keene is going to start the season for Michigan this year. I don't know if he's going to finish the season for the Wolverines, but what happens if you have that situation where, you have maybe the more talented guy as the backup, but obviously the less experienced guy as the backup, but he kind of shows just these huge flashes of playmaking ability for Michigan in those type of situations. And if Mikey Keene isn't playing as well, there might be a time where Sharon Moore is maybe forced to make a decision. I think there's a lot of comps to the McNamara and McCarthy situation. I think you have a proven veteran starter, but you have a younger guy that I think is better talent-wise. When Jim Harbaugh was the coach in 2021, they rode with the experience throughout all of this. I'm not sure if that's going to be the same. I'm not sure if that's going to be the end result in all of this. I kind of go back to the schedule. After those first 4 games, after that road game against Nebraska, Michigan has a bye week, and they have a home game against Wisconsin. If there is an opportunity, if there is a great opportunity to really transition Bryce Underwood into a starting role after the first month of the season, maybe he's got some spots in there where he has played a little bit as well, and he's got a little bit of experience in a football game against college defenses, and he's kind of learning the playbook, and he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable with it as we get into October a little bit. They got a bye week and then a home game against Wisconsin. That is about as good of a transition, I think, as you could ask for right now if you're Michigan, possibly going over to Bryce Underwood as well. Sharon Moore has proven. Now, last year, I think it's apples and oranges a little bit, last year's quarterback situation with this year's quarterback situation. But Sharon Moore proved when Davis Warren threw multiple picks and he turned the football over, there was precedent that he was able to make the change. He's going to have a lot of pressure from a lot of people to play Bryce Underwood this season.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.